I really want to break down my Feral framework in a really simplified way in real time of how I think about creating content. So hopefully this will help you as you think through creating your own content, whether you are doing carousels, whether you're writing emails, whether you are speaking it in a reel or something like that. So I'm going to show you exactly how I go through and get my thought process for how I'm going to post something in a day. Okay. So when I have my topics, this is going to be mid-funnel, using my Feral framework to influence my audience to see their problem the way that I see it. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm picking first a point that I want to make, and the entire post is going to stem around a very specific point or perspective shift that I'm trying to get my audience to understand. Okay. So the point that I'm going to focus on in this post is you're a coach or a healer selling deep identity level work, but you're using Instagram selling strategies meant for make money online coaches. Okay. So this is the purpose of this post is to get my audience to believe this and to shift their perspective, but basically like you're using the wrong marketing strategy for the work that you do. Okay. And I say that over and over and over again in different ways. And this is just one example of how I'm breaking this down in a hyper specific way. Okay. Because I could take that same concept and I could just use a different hook or a different way of explaining it and just do that over and over again. But for this one, this is how I'm going to do this. Okay. So how I actually map out my post is I actually go and I write down what is each part of my framework from a very high level. Okay. So on this side, you'll see, okay, so how do I make someone feel seen if I'm speaking directly to someone who is a coach or healer selling deep identity level work, and get them to like basically recognize themselves in this problem. Okay. So what I ask myself is, how can I make them feel viscerally seen in this moment? And where can I meet them at a decision trigger moment? So what I mean by viscerally seen is like, it's not enough just be like, you're a coach or healer who does this. I'm like, I need to get so fucking hyper specific. And this is the part that I honestly sometimes go the longest on. I mean, I'll do like 2 or 3 slides on this to make someone be like, holy shit, this girl knows exactly what I'm thinking, feeling, doing on a day-to-day basis. She sees into my soul. She's literally a fly on the wall inside my office, because how the fuck does she know this? Like, this is so for me. And because we really need to get really good at making your audience feel really, really deeply seen in this problem. And not just that, but you have to meet them at a problem moment where they feel frustrated, stuck, or just like, oh, like there's agitated enough to want to make a change. So I want to bring in some type of frustration they're feeling, because you want to meet someone at a moment that they're willing to make a change, because it's harder in your marketing to convince someone to want to make a change versus making someone feel seen in a moment where they're like, oh, fuck, like I probably should go seek help for this, right? So I do that. So essentially what I did is I just wrote down briefly, okay, so this is my idea. You're someone who sells deep identity level, life-changing work, the unseen, things that are a little bit harder to explain, the value of a quick sentence. And what's the pain point? They feel resistance to marketing and social media because most of the marketing that they're taught feels manipulative or pushy, or it feels hard to articulate and translate the value of what they do on social media because it's really complex and layered. Okay, so I know this about my audience. So this is a very high level of like, okay, cool. I'm just like jotting down notes for myself of how I'm going to bring this to life. Okay. So this is just like my outline. So I put that in, then I go, okay, so what is the enlightened moment? What am I trying to get my audience to believe is true? How can I shift the way that they're looking at their problem? Okay. And when I do that, I always ask myself, how can I explain this in the most simple way so they can understand? And do I need an analogy to back this up? So if I explain it really simply, but also I go into it assuming like my audience knows nothing about marketing. Like, I'm an expert in this. I need to dumb this the fuck down. I always am like, if a 16-year-old cannot understand what I'm saying, I need to explain this simpler, or I need to bring in an analogy to get them to realize what I'm trying to say. Okay. So my enlightened moment. So essentially, if you're experiencing this problem, the perspective shift that I want to have my audience to have with this post is that your marketing has to work differently if you sell this type of work. And right now you're selling to people as if they already know what they want, aka the solution, instead of focusing on the problem. Okay, so I know this is something that my audience is doing incorrectly, and I want to call them out on this and get them to see like, this is something you're doing incorrectly, and this is why you're not getting the results that you want. Okay, so again, this is just high level. And then I go into, okay, so what's the root issue? So what is the actual solution? Well, I know, because this is, and you can pull this as part of your framework of whatever your methodology is. One of my methodologies is I help you become an influential marketer and guide people, or you use your marketing to guide people's decision-making processes. And that's really the issue here is my audience is not doing this. So I know the solution is you need to guide your audience's decision-making process so they see themselves in the problems that your offer becomes the obvious solution. Okay. If you do that, it's going to fix your problem. So on this slide, I'm asking, how can I explain the root issue solution in a way they've never considered before and completely shifts the way they're viewing the problem? And again, how can I explain this in the most simple way? Do I need an analogy? And then I go into A and L. I usually just put A and L in the same slide because I announce my offer and then I just show just like the impact it's going to have on their life. So I asked myself, how can I tie this now? Everything I said in my solution and everything I made in this post, the points that I made, how can I tie this back to my offer and how my offer is going to solve that? And how can I create urgency and show the cost of waiting? Because I want people to understand the consequence of waiting, right? Because, and it's not doing it from like a weird manipulation place or like a fake urgency place. It's doing it because I know the potential that you all have, and I know the sales and the impact that you're actually missing out on by not understanding this information. And I know that if you get inside Feral Marketers Club, it's going to get you there 10 times quicker. So it's actually me doing a disservice by not like lighting a fire under your ass. So I'm doing it from a place of like, I actually understand your potential. I understand where you could go. And I understand the value that my offers have on people because I've seen it. I've seen it in my own business. I've seen it with all my clients and the results that they're getting. So it's like I'm actually doing my audience a disservice by not giving them that little love and shove of like, I need you to see how important this is and I need you to see what you're missing out on by not doing this, okay? Because people don't know what they don't know. Like my audiences are not marketing experts, but I can help them with that expertise, right? And once they have those pieces of information, they could go a lot farther, a lot quicker. So this is essentially what I did. So basically what I do is I write the post out. So I wrote this, and then I write all the pink stuff. So I go, okay, this is how I'm going to make them feel seen. This is how I'm going to, this is my enlightened point. This is the actual root issue I'm going to bring to life. And then what's the, what offer am I tying this to, and what's the urgency? So for this one, it's, Feral Marketers Club teaches you a completely different approach to marketing. And for as long as you continue learning marketing the wrong way, you're missing out on sales. That's the urgency piece. Okay. So now I'm like, okay, cool. So this is my outline. Now I need to take this and I need to build this out to really make my audience feel seen in this and really understand this. Okay. So we'll start with the feel seen. Okay. So if you remember, this is the high level of what I put. So now I say to myself, how can I make this even deeper? How can I essentially make them feel viscerally seen in this moment to a place where they're like, holy shit, that is me. Okay. So let's go over to how I actually did this. Okay, so on this slide, I think I went through, 3 slides to do this. So before, you could see I did like just 2 paragraphs. Now I'm building out who they actually are and the problem they're experiencing in 3 slides. And I always go really deep on this so my audience knows I'm speaking directly to them, okay? This is why I get so many messages so quickly of people who want to work with me because they're like, you're literally speaking to my soul. Okay. You're someone who sells deep identity level life-changing work, the unseen, things that are a little bit hard to explain the value of in a quick sentence. Okay, so I'm explaining what they're doing, what they're selling. Okay, I know these are things that they say. My clients have said I sell the unseen. They've said it's hard to explain what I do in one sentence. I'm literally repeating back to them the words that I know that they're using. I go even further to explain this even deeper. Your offers don't just help people do something different. They change how people see themselves, how they make decisions, how they move through their life. Okay, and now so I explain what they do. Now I'm going into, if you remember back here, how can I meet them at a decision trigger moment? So a frustration moment. So now it's, how valuable your work is because you've watched the results happen in real time, both with yourself and with your clients. But the problem is, how the F do you translate all the magic and depth of what you do over to social media? Okay. Now and now what I'm going to do is, right, I started talking about the frustration, which is here. How can I bring that frustration to life even more? So then I go to the next slide and I go, marketing on social media has the potential to bring in way more visibility. And I do this intentionally because I want to meet someone at a moment where my audience, I want the people that I'm targeting, I want to bring in people who will actually use social media. They're not going to have this resistance to social media. They know that social media has the opportunity to completely change their business. They're going to show up on social media and they're going to post consistently. So I'm using this as almost like a subtle audience identifier where I go, how powerful social media is. Because if someone in my audience is reading that and they're like, well, I don't fucking like social media, then they're going to disqualify themselves, right? So I'm intentionally calling in someone who I know is going to put the effort into social media or is posting consistently already, because that is just what's required when you are someone who sells their services on social media, okay? Marketing on social media has the potential to bring in way more visibility and income into your brand, but you kind of have this hate-love relationship with marketing. Again, you're really getting specific. I'm like, what is the thing that's going on inside their brain that I know my audience is thinking, where it's like, oh, I know social media is so powerful, but I kind of fucking hate it, right? And maybe sometimes and I try to think to myself, like, what are they thinking that they probably haven't admitted out loud, or they don't want people to admit out loud, or maybe they haven't said. But a lot of my clients feel this, right? And I know this because this is something that they have literally said. So again, it's really paying attention to the words that your actual audience and clients are saying. So I'm like, well, why do it? So now I have to articulate it for them. I have to show them, I understand what you're saying. So it's not just enough to be like, you have this hate-love relationship and then move on. I explain why they have this hate-love relationship. So I'm not just making the statement where they feel seen in it, but I'm explaining why they feel that way. So they're like, holy shit, you actually understand why I feel that way, okay? And so I explain it. The marketing you've been taught or see everyone else doing, it feels manipulative, pushy, or too performative for the work that you do. And when you try to explain the value of what you do, it turns into paragraphs, caveats that ends up sounding like an inspirational Pinterest sounding quote, which is not what they want. Because your work is layered, it's nuanced, and it's deeply human. Okay. See how deep we're getting in here? I'm only on slide 2. Like now if someone reads this, is gonna be like, holy shit, like you're literally inside my brain. And then I go even deeper on a third level. Okay. And again, I'm going back to that frustration of like, I'm fucking doing all the right things. Like, I don't understand why this isn't working. I'm meeting people at that decision trigger moment because people have to feel frustrated or stuck enough to want to make a change. So I'm meeting them at that moment. What really gets under your skin is, social media works. You've watched other people drastically increase their reach, their income, their impact. I know this is a frustration that my audience feels. Like they see other people in their industry doing something similar and are blowing up on social media. And they're like, why the fuck am I not doing this, right? You show up consistently, you share client wins, you talk about the transformation, you prove the work works, and yet it still feels like people are skimming the surface of what you do and are missing the point entirely. Like your audience just can't see your value the way you see it. Okay. Over time, that gap between how powerful your work actually is and how invisible it feels online starts to feel infuriating. I know this is the main thing that my audience feels. It's like, I know my work is so valuable. How the fuck do I get other people to understand this? Okay. So I'm bringing that to life. Okay. So that is all just from this. Feel seen. So every time I make a point, I'm like, how can I bring this to life further? How can I show that I actually know what they're talking about? How can I show them I know the thoughts that are going on inside their head? Okay. So then we move to enlighten, which is how can I get my audience, it's more like, how can I shift my audience's perspective and get my audience to believe this to be true? And how can I explain it simply? So now I have to show them, okay, so this is what the actual issue is, and this is what you're misunderstanding about your problem. It's not that your work is too deep or too complex to sell on social media, because I know that's the thought that's going through their mind. That's the objection, right? I'm handling an objection right now with this enlightened moment, because they're like, well, social media doesn't work for me. It's just harder for me because I sell something deep and complex or spiritual or something like that. No, that's not the case. You're just using marketing strategies made for Make Money Online coaches. Okay. It's not enough to just make this statement. I have to explain why. And this is really important. So I can't just, like, a lot of times I see you guys posting content where you have a perspective shifting piece of content where you're like, you're not doing this correctly. You need to be doing it in this way. And you literally just make the statement, but you don't allow your audience to agree with that statement. Okay. So it's not enough for me to just say this. I have to then be like, I need to explain why this is so that you actually agree with me as well. Okay. So now I go on to explain why that is. Okay. So if I'm explaining, so why is most marketing strategies made for Make Money Online coaches? Well, most social media marketing is built for surface level problems and fast identity reinforcement, not deep internal change, because that's what my audience sells. It's designed to sell outcomes people already want and already understand, like make more money, get more clients, lose weight, feel confident. It's really easy to understand those outcomes, but your work doesn't meet people at the end of the decision. It meets them before they even know how to name what's wrong. I explain it even further because I'm like, I still don't think they're going to understand what I'm saying, so I'm going to take it a step further. When you try to use marketing strategies built for clear external problems, which is what 99% of business coaches teach, on work that lives in the unseen or on a much deeper identity level, it's not going to sell because your marketing skips the psychological step your audience actually needs for this type of work, recognizing themselves in the problem. A lot of people sell the solution. I know this is one of my main issues that I know my audience does. They sell the solution. They're like, you need nervous system regulation work. You need confidence work. You need this. People do not recognize themselves in that body of work. And you have to start with the most Make Money Online, like tangible outcomes. You solution sell and you start with the solution. However, in the case of selling deep, life-changing work, you have to actually do the opposite. So that's what I'm telling my audience here is I'm getting them to realize why what they're doing isn't working. You have to get them to recognize themselves in the problem first. The moment in your marketing where they feel seen enough to think, oh, that's what this is. That's why I feel like that. If that moment doesn't happen in your marketing, it doesn't matter how clearly you explain your offer. It doesn't matter how many testimonials you'll share or how powerful your results are. People will not buy because they don't fully see themselves in your work yet. And you cannot say yes to a solution you don't recognize yourselves in. Okay. So I went so fucking deep. I think was that 2 slides to get to this point. You have to use different marketing and you have to sell the problem instead of the solution, right? I could have just said that, but my audience wouldn't get what I meant, right? Because they don't know what I mean. Like you have to guide them through understanding what you're trying to say by really elaborating here. Okay. And what I did, if you remember, I go, do I need an analogy for this? Because I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I feel like they're going to get what I'm saying. However, I feel like maybe they're still not. So then I brought in a analogy because I was like, I feel like an analogy could do really well here to even like further land this home. So like, okay, now I fully get what you're saying. So it's like a mechanic handing you a $3,000 repair quote without ever explaining what's wrong with your car, right? So when you get that, you're like, okay, they might be right. The fix might be necessary, but without understanding the problem, it feels confusing and unsafe to say yes. So I'm using this analogy to literally show you why your audience is not saying yes to you. Because when you say like, you need nervous system regulation work, you need this, yeah, you might be right. And the fix might be necessary and your solution might be the obvious solution. But if they don't understand that, it's going to feel risky, and people don't buy from risk. They don't buy if they feel confused or unsafe. That's why it's not selling. Okay. So now at this point, my audience is like, okay, I fully get what you're saying. So what's next? And now the question is like, so what's the solution, right? So that's when we move on to root issue or solution. So basically, how do I then explain what the solution is in a way that they've never considered before? And again, how can I make it the most simple way so that they can understand? And do I need an analogy? So essentially what I said here was, you need to guide your audience's decision-making process so they see themselves in the problem, so your offer becomes the obvious solution. I know, but that's what the solution is. So I'm like, how do I say this in a way my audience will actually understand it? Okay, so essentially you're trying to sell the solution when what your audience actually needs is help understanding themselves. With deep identity level work, people don't decide by comparing options or weighing outcomes. They decide when they feel deeply seen by your marketing. So I'm going to give examples of that. So again, I'm not just making a statement. I'm always giving examples. When a post describes a pattern they thought was just them and they realize it's actually a thing. When something they've been blaming on motivation, discipline, or mindset suddenly has a clear explanation. When their confusion or frustration gets named in a way they've never been able to articulate before. Your marketing isn't meant to convince someone to buy. It's meant to guide them through that internal decision-making process. I remember that's what I said. I said you need to guide your audience's decision process. So I'm explaining this so they understand, going again, a level deeper. When you're marketing, so it's like, how do I explain this deeper so they understand? When your marketing is based on the level of depth your work actually requires, and you're leading people to recognize their own patterns, their own stuck points, their own unspoken thoughts, your work naturally positions itself as the obvious next step. So you don't have to push, you don't have to perform, you don't have to convince. Remember, this is the objection my audience had in the beginning. They felt like, where did I put this? Here. I talked about this thing they're probably feeling. You feel like it's manipulative, pushy, performative. And I say, when you do that, it doesn't feel like that. I'm actually invalidating their excuses. You don't need better selling tactics. You need a different marketing strategy entirely. Let's say marketing here. One that completely shifts the way your audience is viewing their problems. The decision to work with you feels safe, grounded, and inevitable. Okay. So essentially, I'm not teaching them necessarily how to do this entirely, but I'm saying like in their mind now, what's happening is they feel really, really seen, right? They're like, oh shit, this is me. I shift their understanding of the problem. So like, oh, so I basically invalidating an objection or excuse that they have. It's not that my work is too deep or too complex. I'm just using the wrong marketing strategy. And then I show them, well, this is what you actually need to do. Oh, I need to be able to guide their decision-making process and use a different marketing strategy so that my work becomes the obvious next step. Okay, cool. So at this point, my audience is so bought in to how I've guided them through this decision-making process. Literally, I'm doing right now what I'm telling you that you have to do, is guiding the decision-making process. So then when I announce my offer and link it back to my offer, it's like, duh, like this post, I'm going to post this today and I'm probably going to get at least 2 or 3 DMs for people asking to work in Feral Marketers Club because it's so specific and because I guided them to understand their problem to position my offer as the obvious solution. So now what I do next is inside Feral Marketers. So I essentially told them you need a different marketing strategy because you sell deep life-changing identity work. Okay, cool. So inside Feral Marketers Club, you learn a completely different approach to marketing. I'm literally telling you I do this exact thing. One that helps your audience recognize themselves in your body of work instantly, so your work naturally positions itself as the obvious next step. No manipulation, no performance, no make money online tactics, just a clear, repeatable way to translate deep identity level work into marketing that people actually understand and say yes to quickly. This is the problem my audience has. I'm saying I can solve that problem. Okay, so this is, to go back to here, this was this. FMC teaches you a completely different approach to marketing. So I built that out to basically tie it back to the entire post to position my offer as like everything I said in the post of what you need to do, my offer does that. Okay, so then I go back to, then I want to create some urgency, and I always end with a line of urgency. For as long as you keep learning marketing from people who don't understand how your audience actually makes purchasing decisions, you'll keep convincing yourself your work is too hard to sell. When in reality, you could be making 5 times what you are now by selling on Instagram the right way for your body of work. So that's the life impact. Like you could be making 5 times more sales. So I'm showing them this is actually possible for you if you move, if you learn the right marketing strategy. And again, I'm doing it from a way, a love and shove way, where it's like, I'm not doing it to create this fake urgency or like manipulate you. I'm literally telling you I have the solution for you, and like if you choose to invest in yourself and you learn marketing the correct way for your body of work, like you can actually see results very quickly. I'm not just saying this to blow smoke up your ass. I'm saying this because I've literally had so many clients come through and work with me, and I've seen fantastic results, right? And that could be you as well. So this is how I create content, and that's exactly how I do it. I literally start with the outline first. And I find that doing the outline first is actually really helpful, because a lot of times you start with a thought, and then you kind of like, as you're building it out, you kind of start to like go all over the place, and you think of something else, and all of a sudden by the end of it, it's like you actually touched on like 3 different topics, or you kind of lost the plot altogether. So I really like to map this out for all my posts. And then once I have it mapped out, I'm like, okay, cool. Now how do I bring this to life even further? And then I go and build it out. So hopefully this helps you guys.